Okay. Today's date is Monday, the 18th, November, and my name is Jacob Stuckel. I'm the Warren County Archival Assistant here, and we're here for the Oral History program, and we're here with...
Larry Sims, Warren County Sheriff.
Thank you for coming. I suppose I'll skip the question that says your official title, so I'm going to cross that out. Where were you born?
I was born in Zanesville, Ohio, east of Columbus, about 50 miles. Born and raised there.
All right. And that's where you grew up?
That's where I grew up. I graduated from Zanesville High School. Went on to college there at Muskingum Area Technical College. Ohio University of Zanesville there has a branch. And then became employed at the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office at 20 years old in May of 1978.
All right. What led to that decision ultimately? I always hear a variety of opinions, but I'm curious about yours.
Sure. I believe I really started thinking about this in junior high and early high school. I had a good friend of mine who was a little bit older than I was that had already started in the field, and my interest just grew from there. I was entering the college for that criminal justice program, and then just was fortunate enough to have that opportunity to start there as a corrections officer, and it just took off from there, and I've been truly blessed since then.
All right. It makes sense. Having that personal connection to it really does amplify it. Yeah. And where have you lived?
Well, predominantly Zanesville, where born and raised, and never left there till I transitioned here to Warren County in October of 2000, so over 24 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. How was the move between the two counties?
The move was a little odd, I should say. The transition to coming over to a new geographic area really was the biggest thing. Just coming over to a place that wasn't totally familiar with. The good fortune was I spent about 22 and a half years of my career at Muskingum County Sheriff's Office in a variety of positions, kind of working my way through as a deputy sheriff. Spent about 16 years there as a detective, then got a few promotions along the way. And being at the sheriff's office, I believe helped that transition here, because when I came here, again, I ended up in a sheriff's office, was at least familiar with how the county government worked, how the county interacted with our office, going to courts, various courts, filing charges. There was really very little difference in that aspect. It was largely just learning the county and the way around here and how to do things on Warren County's end of things.
Mm-hmm. All the little nuances between Muskingum and Warren.
Correct.
Fair enough. And you said a variety of positions. Would you mind expanding on that?
Sure. Like I said, I started out as a corrections officer, spent just a little over 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And went to the police academy there to become a deputy sheriff. So I was a uniformed deputy sheriff over there for a little over a year, actually, before becoming a detective. And there I found a home. In spite of the sheriff title, which I'm certainly appreciative of, probably my favorite job at this career has been as an investigator, a detective, and during that time frame just became specialized. Even though we worked a variety of different cases, I took an interest in specializing in physical and child abuse investigations, and then that carried on pretty well over here. I did get a promotion from a deputy sheriff to sergeant to lieutenant, became a captain of operations there, and then in like I said, late 2000, came to Warren County. They were advertising a child abuse investigator's position here, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. Came over here and did that for approximately 4 years. Then movement promotions happening here. It's kind of bizarre. I'm not sure I have a real answer how I got here. In 2000 and 8 years later, I became the sheriff. A lot of help, a lot of people, a lot of support, that type of thing.
Of course. And when you mentioned child abuse investigator, a lot of people wouldn't want to pick that sort of a detective aspect of a sheriff's office. It's generally not the most optimistic, from what I understand.
Right.
Why? It's interesting that you picked that. Why would you go in that line of work?
Well, I mean, it is. You are correct. It's a tough field, tough line of work. While you can look for some rewards in the families that you're helping, you see a lot of ugly things. But I focused on those things that hopefully we could help with, and whether it's to transition those impacted into some type of services or the offenders being punished by the courts. I've always seemed to have, my wife kind of laughs about this, because she says I have this unique ability to communicate well with kids and then people that are in their 70s and 80s. There never seemed to be an in-between. We kind of get, but it's tough to, I wouldn't even begin to say in this interview what kind of ugly cases I've worked on, but just imagine the worst of the worst, and I've been in the middle of those. But you always come out on the other end with the families and the children that were impacted, and hopefully giving them some positive light of that. And say would hold true here in Warren County coming over. That was the least difficult of the transition in terms of going from investigations to investigations, and it's unfortunate, I guess. It doesn't matter what location you are, there are always those forms of things happening in inside homes. But I still think back, there are a number of cases that just will never leave my head. But there are a lot of good results too, and it's just kind of that balance.
Absolutely, just seeing the families at the end of the day.
Right.
I get it. Because I remember looking on your LinkedIn, of course, I wanted to do a couple more research to make more valid questions. When you wrote in your LinkedIn, it said you were under 3 different departments, prosecutors, I think CPS, and sheriff's office. How did that work out?
Yes, when I came to Warren County, I think it's the structure and how they handled that. Let me back up and say this. Sure. At Muskingum County, the detective section handled those child abuse investigations. When I came to Warren County, they had identified 2 specialized positions that did nothing but child abuse investigations. When I was in Muskingum, I've worked on murder cases, I've worked on low-level offenses, and then I've worked on a bulk of the child abuse investigations. When I came here, the structure in Warren County was that those 2 positions that were dedicated only to handle those types of investigations, all 3 of the entities, the sheriff, the prosecutor, and the children's services, contributed to the funding of those positions. And I was one of 2 of those investigators. So you had 3 bosses. And I mean, it didn't create any difficulty necessarily, but when I came over for the interview initially, there were representatives of 3 different entities there that were taking part in the interview. So that's what I mean by under that structure. It's now since then has changed. The structure is under the sheriff's office now here, like it was where I came from. And not to bore you with that, but the biggest advantage to that is it is difficult, as you mentioned earlier. It is difficult to find individuals to want to work these cases. There are some that have good specialties to be able to do that, but the original 3 employer structure put those positions in a non-law enforcement public employees retirement system versus the law enforcement component. And I don't know how familiar you are with that, but that also prevented some of the law enforcement people from wanting to get into that, because it took them out of the law enforcement retirement system and put them in the normal retirement system. So we structured it that way so that it would be open the pool up of people that would be interested in doing those jobs.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm not terribly familiar with that system, but that's interesting that's how you had to reconfigure that pool. I would not have been able to guess that just by looking.
Well, we all look forward to retirement, right? And if you're in that role, you're in the law enforcement positions, we all hope we get towards the opportunity to retire. And that just allowed some financial and retirement benefits to somebody that was going to get into these fields. And it lessened the pool, the way it was structured, not intentionally that way, but that was what the cause of it was. So.
All right. And have you only? Well, I suppose you already answered the question. If you've only worked for the sheriff's office, I imagine so, because
yes.
Would you like to go into the detail of as to where the sheriff's office was during your tenure?
Here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when I first came here in 2000, the sheriff's office certainly is in the campus that it's in now. Is at a different location, 550 Justice Drive, and if you're familiar with that, it's attached to the county court, and then the jail was attached directly behind the office. Yeah. And that's where it resided until we were fortunate enough in the county to build a new facility and jail at its current location, and we've been in, it was 3 years this past October that we've occupied the new facility.
All right. And I remember reading a couple articles and seeing a few pictures indicating how it looks now compared to, it looks a lot nicer.
Yeah. Well, the history, and you may know this, there will be a lot of people that know that, because the original jail sits over on Silver Street.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had a chance to walk through there, it's just a phenomenal site. I understand they may be trying to do something to maybe allow it to be a historical site or for people to see. I don't know. Don't quote me.
No worries.
But
we're hopeful, but
yeah.
We don't know.
But the jail that we just vacated 3 years ago came over here in 75, and then in 97 there was an addition put on it to expand the bed sites, the number of beds, if you will. And I guess the historical changes also include an increase of people in jail, which is not necessarily the positive thing, but you certainly have to have that as part of our criminal justice system. So when they expanded that to include 197 beds, I think, total, and then it expanded again to 280 under, when I was fortunate enough to become sheriff, we were able to add an additional number of beds, which was able to help save our county dollars, as I think seemingly moving the direction that we ultimately went. But it helped slow that down a little bit, save some of the money until it actually had to happen. So that 550 Justice Drive location went kind of through two additional changes from its original size, and 280 beds when we were building this facility we're in now. but we were averaging probably close to 300 inmates a day, and so it was over capacity and somewhat outdated, and then this new facility, we're so blessed to be here in this county, and blessed to have had the opportunity to work with the county officials here that could help make this happen. And if you talk to any of the men and women that work over there now, it's a difference of night and day. And there's it'll be a great opportunity for Warren County in the future, as there's 499 beds, and there's still somewhere around 280 to 300 people in jail, so there's plenty of empty beds that will allow for growth. In fact, on a funny note, just before I came in here, I was out there in the lobby, and one of the county employees had 5 of our inmates, people that were spending time in our jail, that were out on work detail. And one of them made it a point to compliment me, although the credit goes far further than me, but credit me with the jail that we're in now. Not necessarily structurally, but that was part of it, but they were complimentary of the operation, and they were complimentary of the men and women correction staff that were working in there, of just treating people right. So it was those are the rewards that you see, or we see, as in this new facility. You can get all the bells and whistles, and you can get this brand new fancy facility, but if we aren't communicating with people properly, it takes away from all that. So.
Absolutely. That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
Good feedback.
It's great feedback. It's great feedback.
I would have anticipated that to happen.
Right.
Does that happen often?
Yeah, I think it does some. I mean, there are people that, that land themselves in jail that aren't bad people.
Right.
Some people do dumb things. There are some people that generationally are in and out of our facility, for a variety of reasons. A lot of times that's, addiction driven, or, mental health driven, or a combination thereof. And then there are some really bad people. But most of the people that we see day to day in our jail, and I tell this to our young people today, you'll see some of these same people throughout your entire career. I mean, it is sad, but that's the facts. And so those people, you need to treat properly, right? Because you're going to see them the whole career. And when you talk about, I will share this one story, because you kind of ask, does that happen often? I can tell you this experience in my career that happened as a corrections officer. After I went out on the road as a deputy sheriff back in Muskingum County, and I was working an off-duty detail at a local bar, nightlife facility. In those days, we had no radios on our bodies. That didn't happen. And so I'm working it by myself, and it's time to close. No cell phones. This is 1980.
True.
So they throw everybody out, and there's probably 45, 50 people, and then there's me. And I had no means of communicating with the office, because that didn't exist. I had my personal car, and there was a few rowdy people, drunk guys that weren't going to leave. And they were challenging me, So here I am by myself. I got several guys, and the other people were just standing there because everybody wants to see what happens.
Oh, of course.
Of course, they weren't filming because there's no cell phone.
Right.
But I was in for several minutes. It was a stalemate. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to handle it, other than just trying to continue to talk and de-escalate the whole situation. Finally, one person walked out of the crowd and got over to me to say that he would help me. And it was somebody that had been in jail while I was a corrections officer. and because of how they were treated.
Okay.
So that caused everybody to leave.
No kidding.
So I'm a firm believer we are all in the people business.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ever perfect, nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But it can pay dividends, and you can do your job, do it effectively, and you treat people the right way, and sometimes people drive it where you can't do anything other than take action forcefully, but most of the time it takes care of itself. So does that pay dividends? Absolutely. No question.
That's fantastic. I think to my mother works in the social work business.
Nope.
And similar aspect. Sometimes you get reoccurring, and if you work in the people business like you mentioned, then that pays dividends. Absolutely. That's fantastic to hear. What are some of your daily tasks and duties day in and day out?
Well, as the sheriff, my main responsibility is to oversee the operation, day-to-day operations. And whether you're talking about the fiscal responsibility, budget management, personnel management, I believe in my heart of hearts what I should be doing as the sheriff is to make sure that our men and women have the tools, the finances, the equipment to be able to do their jobs effectively, and obviously play a big role in finding the right people for those roles, those supervisory roles. And if anybody thinks that they do these things on their own, then they probably have an ego that would be too big to come into this room. I am certainly blessed to be surrounded by people. I do take pride in helping identify who those people are and overseeing those types of responsibilities. As an elected official, as a sheriff and elected official, I am expected to be in the public, attending meetings or public events, speaking opportunities, and I've done that for probably way past the 16 years I've been blessed to be sheriff. But that's to me that's an easy job, and I say that because again it just goes back to people. It goes back to people. I've told people no. I've had upset people that have either called, emailed, or not happy about decisions, and 99.9% of the time, if you can explain the stance, you don't have to change your decision, but this is why it was made, and be honest, it resolves the vast majority of those situations. And we've seen a lot of ugliness over the last few years in our country, right? And especially things that have been in the law enforcement realm and the criticisms that come along with us doing our jobs. I, as the sheriff, was getting a lot of that communication back, criticizing this, criticizing that, or what are you going to do about it? Or and the bottom line is this. One, you work inside your area of control, right? We deal with our office and our people who I have 100% faith in. If something goes wrong, and it can in this profession, right?
Yeah.
You deal with it. You deal with it effectively. You deal with it transparently. And the good fortune is we're in a profession here, we're in a county here, one that is supportive of your law enforcement. Doesn't mean they don't expect you to do the right thing, because we are expected to do the right thing, right? And as long as you're doing those things, we don't have that kind of animosity or even some of the threats that some of the communities, some in Ohio, some throughout the country, that are putting law enforcement under the microscope, because we should be doing those things anyway. And sometimes bad things are going to happen. We shouldn't be, you take about some of these things, and I think about these because as a person in the role, And I don't have any ego for the role that I'm in, but I do understand the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is making sure that we take care of our people and we take care of the responsibilities that come along with this job. I can't be consumed with what happened in Minnesota or any of those places and I shouldn't be sharing my opinion about what happened there, because I know a little snippet based upon what the media reports. So that to me is probably the biggest importance of the sheriff here, is making sure that we have updated policies and procedures, make sure that we're following the law, making sure that we are getting the right people for our job. And we've done that, not just because of me, but because of the group of people that we collectively work together.
Right, and work within your area of control.
Right.
I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
And you seem to be more of an administrative role now. Do you miss being more out in the field as opposed to?
I do. There's obviously certainly pros and cons to that, because I don't have to get out in the middle of the snow in a traffic accident and do those types of things. In fact, it's a great question, because I tend to say, listen, since I haven't been a real cop in a long time, out there with the boots on the ground and doing the real work, I do miss that. I miss the interaction with the people that are actually out there doing these things. And I think I mentioned that one of my favorite roles in this profession has been is to be a detective and working a crime scene and setting up interviews and trying to figure out who did it, that type of thing, and working those cases from the beginning all the way to being in the courtroom with it and hoping that it goes the right way. Those things were I spent a lot of years doing those, and very enjoyable, even through some of the ugliness. But I appreciate the opportunities that I have had throughout my career, and there's a lot of people that I am appreciative to for helping me, guiding me, supporting me, making sure I'm doing the right thing. Because it's not just about me. This is about the sheriff's office in general. 213 people altogether over there, and they're all a wonderful group of people to work with, even when we butt heads.
All right, that's a fantastic way to put it.
Yeah.
213, my goodness. Well, you guys need it. You guys need those people there. What is something that you don't think people know about your position in Warren County?
The position as sheriff?
Yeah.
I think some people have the impression that I get more involved in the day-to-day. The calls for service that happen, the initial handling, those types of situations. And as those progress into maybe a investigation, maybe more serious crime, I think some people have the impression that the sheriff is at either all of these or got his hands in all of these. But this role, I think I'd like to just. There's probably a lot of people that do believe this. Is I'm hoping someday, if I wanted anything when I leave here at the end of this term, is that I even passed on some small piece of either my experience or education or training that helped us all. And the way I do that is by communicating with them on a regular basis, having these men and women that are talking about these cases, and I do follow those things. Maybe not the smallest of cases, but anything that has an impact on the community in some way. And and I say the smallest because even the smallest things are impacting somebody, right? Yeah. My friend that I told you about that that I think helped guide me in my career, or get me jump started in this career. He's still probably my best friend today, and he's retired now. But I remember him telling me this: if you can't handle effectively the small case, you'll never be able to effectively handle the big case, because these people down here are equally as important to what happened to them and how they were impacted. And then this last piece I'll say about that is, I can't remember the year, but he was my lieutenant in the detective bureau. I was a sergeant, and at that time we had 4 other detectives. Christmas Eve, we worked a half a day that day, but we were there when this happened. And a young woman was out Christmas shopping, for stuff for her kids, and had stuff in her car, and her car got broken into. And they stole those stuff out of the car. Probably all of it collectively back in those days, $150 maybe total. It wasn't a lot of money. A lot of money to her. And he and I started working on that case to try to resolve it. It was early morning hours of Christmas Day that we were able to find these individuals and get this stuff back. We could have easily got the report written, got it filed, and asked somebody else to follow up on it later. We could have left, went home, spent time with our families, did our own Christmas thing, and we didn't let that happen. We got lucky in some of it, but that's how important people are, no matter where you are in the spectrum. So in the sheriff's office, to me, in the sheriff's responsibility, if Larry Sims would call and say, listen, I had this theft and here's what's happened, and my responsibility was to make sure that I'm evaluating that, and I may send it to that deputy sheriff or that sergeant or that lieutenant to get some follow-up on it. But it's to be there for the people. When there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, there are some people that don't think that the sheriff position should be a political position. Well, I say that because I want to say this. While I don't disagree, it shouldn't be political that I'm going to get over here and get into the weeds with whether you're a registered Democrat or a registered Republican. I love the fact that I'm an elected office. I love the fact that the people in this county get to vote for who is in this office. And their expectations should be that my position represents everybody in this county, no matter what your political affiliation is. And so, again, I go back to your question. What do people think that I do in this role? I answer to them.
That's a good way to put it. Very, very good way to put it. How often do you interact with the public in different roles, like via outreach or patrols or conferences or whatnot?
Sure.
How often do you do that?
Well, probably all the above. I have made it a point every year since I've been in office to try to get to at least one of the either township trustee, village council, city council meetings throughout the county. Even though, the sheriff jurisdiction is county-wide, but it doesn't take precedence over Mason Police Department. They have their jurisdiction. That's one of the misconceptions that some public can have, is that we're in charge of those other police departments and their jurisdictions. That's not true. So if Mason has their police chief and department, they have their jurisdictional area, right, and that's their responsibility. Now, we all communicate with one another, we all work with one another, but it's not like we can go in there and take over something that they have going on, and we wouldn't do that anyway. But what I have tried to do is to make myself and our office available to any one of them, whether they're in our true enforcement responsibility or not. So I try to get around and share some of the facts or the yearly reports or things like that to each one of those councils, whether it's Harveysburg, Pleasant Plain, City of Mason, Franklin, those kind of things. And it's helped build a lot of relationships. Relationships that I truly appreciate as well. It lets everybody know that, one, here's what we are, here's what we do, and they're important to us as well. So that's the biggest thing to me that I have liked to do, is just to get out there in front of them and say, hey, here's what's happening on the sheriff's office side of things. But I've been asked to give talks to community groups, veteran organizations, Boy Scout groups. We certainly have a DARE program that we operate with a number of the school districts, and we have for years. And I go to those DARE graduations. There's been some that I missed, but I hate missing those, because these are our young people.
Right.
And these are the people that are going to be growing up and taking these positions. So it's a good opportunity to do that. And you see parents there as well. I've been asked to come and talk to groups that aren't happy about certain things in this world that we live in, whether it's the constitutional values or the Second Amendment right issues that do come up from time to time. There hasn't been a group that I have had any concern with going and at least talking to them, hear their concerns, answer their questions. And at the end of the day, it all ends up, and it's always ended up very, very well. And I've gotten to know a lot of people in the county as a result of that. And it's been a blessing, really. And I think that is probably one of the biggest roles that the elected position of the sheriff should be doing. And it gives us and to be honest with you, it gives me an opportunity to brag about the men and women that are doing this job, because they're doing the real job. And as I've done these talks and been out in the community like that, I get patted on the back for this success or that success, and it's really not me. And I'm very proud to be part of it. But that's good to hear too, because then we can pass that right along to the men and women that do it.
Absolutely. And those little outreach, I shouldn't call them little, those outreach parts are very important, because I should say I'm an Eagle Scout. I went to Boy Scouts, and I grew up in Montgomery County, and I remember meeting my sheriff at the time, or even visiting the jailhouse, not the jailhouse, the courthouse at the time. So I think it means a lot. And being the face of the sheriff's office, do you think it's an odd position to be in after all your time as an investigator and also a deputy officer? Is it odd to become the face?
I don't know if odd. I mean, it's very humbling. It's a very humbling position to be in. It really is, because a lot of people, this is a big position, right? A big deal. And I don't say that because, I'm going to strut around here like but it is a big deal. And in people's eyes, the position of sheriff is a big deal. That's why it's very humbling to me, because I'm not so sure I feel like a big deal. I feel like an individual that has been blessed by so many things, just like everybody else, not perfect. I'm not perfect, never will be perfect. But it's a big deal position, and it does, when you talk about odd, the odd feeling is, how did Larry Sims get here? From, little Zanesville, Ohio, and to be in the role that I'm at now, I just sometimes baffled by it. But here I am, and going to work hard at it, always going to work hard at it.
Fair. I know you went into some of the detail on how your position can be very rewarding, especially hearing feedback. What other aspects do you find working with the public can be rewarding?
Well, I mean, we'll talk about our public in our county specifically where I've had those experiences. The men and women and even the public in general they really truly do love law enforcement. Mm-hmm. They first responders. They love seeing what we do. They're fascinated by the things that we see and do, and to be able to share those things, or even just to sit and share a cup of coffee. It doesn't even have to be anything specific. I've done that numbers of times, sat in groups of people that we've talked about everything and anything but law enforcement. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important for our public to know who you are and know what we do. Know that there's some reassurance that not just us, but that the other county elected officials, the funding sources here are providing the right equipment. And it's those pieces, they want to feel safe, right? The average person wants to raise their kids, have a job, and be safe, right? Those opportunities I think most of us all want. We want our kids to grow up, be successful, be safe. And the sheriff's office is one piece of that can give some reassurance that we're there. And if we're a phone call away to ask questions or, handle some concerns and direct them. And they need to be able to see that. And I think it helps just kind of let them do their daily activities and lives, and that's rewarding to me. Sure, we have people that complain about different things. We've had people in our office that have made mistakes, but if you are upfront, honest about it, deal with it, whatever the situation is, whether it's additional education, training, or equipment. My experience has been is if they see all that happening, they're good with it. And we've been blessed that way, So I hope that answers your question. That was a long way to get there.
No, that's a good way of putting it. And more of a detailed idea of what you find rewarding about that position. So, hey, I don't mind at all. And of course, I have to go with the inverse. Is what do you find challenging working with the public? You can go in as detailed as you like because there's either cases or with complaints and whatnot. So,
well, like I said, we have had we've had complaints for one reason or another. Usually, it's specific to an incident that maybe they were involved in, and it might sound weird to say this, but I have no issues with somebody complaining. And there's been times where those complaints are not justified, but we still work through that. We still work hard to try to verify what it is they're saying and if there's any validity to it, and to be able to bring them back in and show them, or if there has been some mistakes made, to let them know here's the steps that we're taking. Here's the steps we have taken. Here's the results of the investigation. And, when somebody we've never really had, that I can think of, there's probably been any real hostile people. There's still been some people that have complained and then weren't happy with the results and they left not happy. But that's part of the profession we're in, and I think if you can resolve it and everybody goes their ways with an understanding, and they at least see the picture, then that's part of our responsibility also. We can't always think that everything is going to be happy and perfect, everybody's going to go. But it is our responsibility to handle both ends of the spectrum. This group of people that's happy to see you, and we're called out to people when they're probably in their best day or worst day, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about your mother in social work. I mean, she's seen some people not having a good day, right? And so handling some of those things are just very, very difficult. But just being upfront with it, being honest about it, it's part of what we do, good, bad, or indifferent.
Right. And you've mentioned, I don't know if transparency is quite the right word, but you mentioned being upfront and honest and just being clear with people. How important would you say transparency is for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it seems like I've always felt that's the way we should be. I mean, that seems to have gotten to be the buzzword over the years.
Yeah,
but, public records are public records, right? And we live in that world where they have always been available to people to see. Now, there's exceptions to that for periods of time, depending upon whether something's current or you're still working on things. But it's absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary to gain and then keep the public trust. Because if you don't have that, if they don't have any faith in you, that doesn't just impact Larry Sims. Larry Sims, the sheriff, he could still be, staying elected because it's hard to unelect somebody. I could still be coming and going from work. But where it really concerns me, who it impacts, is the men and women that are out there. They're the ones going in and out of these homes. They're the ones that are managing the people that are in our jail. And I would fear they would feel the brunt of the public's displeasure, of maybe the lack of transparency or something that we didn't, even if it was a controversial situation and the end result was handled appropriately and here's the results of it, there still could be unhappy people. I'd rather take that. I'd rather that come to me than it is for the people that are out there doing that job.
Fair. And yeah, I understand the idea of transparency for a brief period of time, and we've even gotten a couple of requests. People think that they go to us rather than you guys, referring to body cam footage. And of course, that's not always a big. It's people running around. It's gonna be hard to see, and not everybody's gonna be satisfied about that.
And I'll touch on that just because the body cam. And I'm going to be full disclosure here. The body cam situation started coming about really kind of several years ago, and it really got jump started in follow up with some controversial law enforcement interactions. Whether it was Minnesota and some other places across the country that people were complaining. Certain people were complaining that we were covering things up, or we would have been able to tell that you didn't do anything or didn't do something right if we'd had it on camera, those kind of things. And then you get politicians in the middle of something like that, and the politicians don't help those situations at all. Some might, but many of them don't understand our roles and our job, and they're usually there to placate to the public that's going to give them votes. But in our situation, way back before I became sheriff, we've had a lot of recordings, in-car cameras and audio, video recordings. The jail's been under video recording for way back in the previous facility. Audio's tough in there some because of the whole echoing and the size, but there's always been video recording. And the body cam situation, I personally had not put the body cams in place yet. It is in the works, and no necessarily particular reason other than, and in our county, again, we haven't experienced much of this, but like backlash as a result of it. There will be some under the new sheriff, and I think that's a great thing to do. It's never going to rid our profession or the community from complaints. You've probably seen it too. I've seen all over a number of situations over the country that even on body cams, they still complain, or you weren't turned the right way and didn't get to see it, or it's blurry. I mean, there was a situation in Columbus where the police officer had to shoot a person trying to cut the other person's throat, and he got criticized because of the way he handled that, and it was fully viewable. So to do things to progress changes, technology, I think is phenomenal. As long as you have the understanding that it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to get rid of people that are just going to complain. But if it helps in us doing our jobs better, then I'm all in.
Right. And it's, I mean, it's a lot since from when you started versus now. You mentioned not even having a phone, and it's a big progress that we've done in the last however many years.
Well, the technology, I love the technology. I really do. But as you mentioned, in the 70s there weren't cell phones. There wasn't computers, and in 1992 I was a detective then, so from 78 to 92, so I was at that many years in my career, and we would keep statistics on cases that we worked, how they were resolved, closed, open, arrest, and 1992 was the first computer that we got. And so my end of the year report, I was responsible for the end of the year report. And up until then, it would take me the better part of a work day, so almost 8 hours, to get the end of the year report completed. And then when the computer came in, and as you were tracking your information in there, it would be done in about 45 minutes. So there are a lot of efficiencies. Of course, we all laugh now. As long as the computer's working, it's great.
Right.
When it's not, it's very frustrating.
I mean, with the recent issue with Windows and the fair.
But most part, it has improved a lot of things.
Definitely. And just 92 is when you guys got your first computer. Man, was it difficult training people into doing that sort of paperwork as opposed to previously?
Well, it's all about age, right?
Yeah.
So it's about age and what you came up with, and my lieutenant, my best friend, he didn't transition as easily into the computer world, and there was some frustration on a couple of the old, I'd say older deputy sheriffs that were near the end of their tenure, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll say it anyway, because it's kind of funny. There was enough frustration that this guy's comment was, we should get rid of all the computers and use that funding to hire more cops with bigger guns. And it's like, okay, well, we're not going to do that, but it was his anxiety over dealing with a computer that he knew nothing about.
You didn't see the use in it? Did he not see the use in the computers?
Oh, sure he did. He did. It was the frustration of learning something, learning something different, and then taking a while before he realized the true benefit of it.
Yeah.
But no, it's made. Well, it's like the whole world, really. It's made our profession so much more efficient in a lot of ways, and just access the information that allows you to solve cases, and again, go back to serving the public. If you can, they're victims of something, and fortunately or unfortunately, almost everything we have is out there in the airwaves, right?
Yeah.
And
interconnectivity is a huge part of today's world now.
Sure.
But it helps connecting to other departments, at least, right?
It sure does. So no, it's I couldn't even begin to tell you how much that has changed and still continues to change, right? And we're always looking for that way to improve our services, but that comes along with the frustration of technology and the companies that are seemingly providing it to you, and it's not exactly what they said it was going to be, and so but the good far outweighs the difficulty in getting there.
Absolutely. And even with the newer stuff, I think of AI, and I try to incorporate some of this stuff into my workflow to make it easier, but it's not, it doesn't always work. And I always hear stuff in the news about face identification and how that's trying to help, but like you mentioned, this isn't always 100%. So
Sure.
Trying to move to our expectations, minimize it a little bit.
Well, you're fighting in addition to that,
Mm-hmm.
in our world, you're fighting this might sound negative, it's not meant to be negative, but the people that are concerned about their privacy, right?
Yeah.
The cameras everywhere, the tracking. And, one of my initial responses in these conversations are that, if you've been using a credit card for any length of time, your information's out there.
Yeah.
At least enough to know that they can, track that you were here, you were here, you were here. That doesn't always resolve their concerns, but the cameras that we're seeing now put up at intersections in municipalities, or even in our county here, that will help solve crimes, or help keep safe vital pieces of infrastructure, from people that want to, do bad things to it or create damage. So it's just kind of the way of the world.
That's
Necessary piece of it.
Yeah, if you want to be safer.
Yes.
It's that little cost of being, safer versus amount of, I don't want to say freedom, that's the wrong word, amount of personal life.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I said that. How is your elected office different than any other office in the county, would you say?
I think there are some. I guess looking back over the last 16 years, there are some office holders, I should say. First of all, this is my interactions with the office holders here in the county has just been phenomenal. I think we have a great group of people that have been, doing what they're expected to do.
Yeah.
I'm probably the most visible of those out in the public. Uniform helps.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It does.
But and that's not to take away from what they do. Our office is so far-reaching in serving the public, much more than many other offices are. And I think there is a little bit more of an expectation for the sheriff, whoever that might be, to be out there, to be able to listen, to be able to talk to men and women and even young people. Some of the other offices probably don't have that opportunity because their staff all works in some of their offices here in the county. Ours are widespread. Ours are out in virtually all the communities. So if there is any question or concern, this office is just a little bit different in how it reaches out to the public. They do. Some of them do also in their way, but it's not as far-reaching. And that's not because of Larry Sims necessarily. It's the nature of the position, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. I don't see too many of the commissioners running around out in the field,
You do see them occasionally, but not very often.
Right, comparatively.
Right.
Are there any coworkers, managers, or others you've worked with that have had an impact on you? It's a loaded question, and I know you've had some.
Sure. I mean, probably all of them in some capacity. When I think back, just even talking about since I've been here in Warren County, or even Muskingum County to some degree, coming up in this profession, we build reputation, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. So our reputation gets built in a number of ways, but includes our ability to communicate and work with the prosecutor, as an example, or the courts, the judges. Those are probably the initial other two that we still communicate, and I still communicate with occasionally, are those two offices. In this position that I'm in, it has, driven me towards the treasurer's office or the auditor's office. And when I think of some of those office holders, listening and learning from them has had a big impact on me. I was just a cop, and I say that, not a lot of experience in the world of managing budgets or doing reports that go to the state or even the federal government when you're talking about grants and things like that. So the lack of egos in these office holders just make, here specifically in Warren County, even is they have made that enjoyable and a great learning experience, and some of them even developing into a friendship. On the county commissioner's side, that's our funding source, right? And prior to this, I never really gave a whole lot of thought about where this money's coming from, or it wasn't in my area of concern, right? But equally so, coming into this, the little initial frustration of, you're asking for ABC, but you only get AB, and learning what goes into that has been extremely beneficial to me over the years, and again in this county, because I get around as the sheriff, I go to conferences with some of my colleagues, and I get to hear what's going on in their world and in their counties, and some of it is extremely frustrating. So it's good to come back home and in a county that the leadership there plans well, spends well, and then plans for that future. As you see, the growth that's happening around us, even in this campus, is because of a lot of good decisions being made by people in those positions, and it's good. It's been a benefit for me to learn and watch that.
Absolutely. And so, for throwing out names, with Tom Harris going from sheriff to commissioner, I guess just to start with, do you feel that he prepared you in any way?
Oh, absolutely, he did. Yeah, he's the reason why I'm here. I honestly never thought, coming over here 24 years ago, there was zero intentions of, or no plan, if you will, to become sheriff here. And he was the sheriff that, for whatever reason, and I couldn't tell you to this day why, because he had a office full of people there, and probably some that were not very pleased to see this outsider coming in. When you're in this profession, maybe it's people in general. We're in this profession in a law enforcement agency. You see people coming from the outside in and seemingly taking opportunities that they saw should be theirs because they grew up in the agency. That never made me feel very comfortable, because I was at least not very smart, but I was smart enough to see that not everybody's pleased with that. But he provided me with all the opportunities to see what he was doing, how he was doing it, opportunities to get out and meet people. In the political world, it's all about connections, right? And he provided all that and the support, and I'm very blessed for that, and appreciative of what he has done for me.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny that he went to the commissioner's side for a little bit too,
Sure.
to find out to the more the administrative funding side. So it kind of helped. Do you think that helped bridge a little bit of understanding between funding and office?
Oh, sure. I think any of those kind of things. There certainly wasn't any adverse effect that our office felt. I would think that, he was sheriff for 16 years, and so he understood the needs of the office, and probably had his own disappointments with maybe some of the funding choices. Not to mean that they were wrong. I'm just saying that when you were asking for certain things, you didn't get all of what you wanted. We probably all think, okay, now we're going to roll back and make some adjustments. But I would think that as a law enforcement, because he was in law enforcement for 50 years, he would have some, in your back of your mind, probably some loyalty, not that you would do things wrong, but if there was some advantage that he saw and the reason, justifications for it to help his law enforcement partners, if you will, then I could certainly see him doing that.
Fair.
Yeah.
And Barry suggested a couple people as well, and he suggested asking about Sergeant Brian Dola.
Yeah, Brian Dooley.
Dooley, my bad.
Yeah.
And would you mind talking about him?
Sure. That was a tough time for everybody. That was a dark day for everybody. Brian Dooley, who had spent his young career in the sheriff's office and came up with, there are a lot of men and women at the sheriff's office today that kind of came in the career with Brian. And Brian was a sergeant in our office in May of 2011 and was, along with other law enforcement officers, involved in the pursuit and arrest of two bad guys, and he threw out some stop sticks, and it just even though he did everything properly, it's a very, very dangerous thing to do, and the vehicle and the person driving ended up driving over him and killing him. He lost his life that day, and that's in our profession, there's nothing worse to deal with. And for the men and women there, because we're suffering at that loss, and even, quite honestly, the community was suffering, and I was humbled by the opportunity to, and rightfully so. That's the ultimate test for a person in this role, is what are you going to do? What are you going to do to help bring these men and women forward? What are you going to do to help keep them together the best you can? And I remember very clearly the night that I went to Brian's door to deliver the message to his wife, Abby, and it's I can't think of my life by anything worse than that. And so you day to day you work to try to keep everybody together. Day to day you reveal who you are, I think, in some of these most difficult, dark moments, just genuinely be part of that profession that you are. And I've always felt that. I've always felt that it's a we. It's our office. This has never been Larry Sims' office. It never has. It's not my office. I'm the office holder that is fortunate enough to be in this position at this time. There's going to be other people, right? Because I don't do things by myself. And in this case, too, I didn't do things by myself. I had people surround me. I had people that, and of course, I'm responsible to make decisions, right? And even the toughest decisions, I don't have any problems making those types of things. But you don't do it in a vacuum.
Right.
And to this day, we still do a nightly procession, the same time frame that this happened. And time goes on, right? Times change, people change. The same amount of people are not still at our office, with lots of turnover. It's and you still think, I still see his family, just an outstanding family, but none of that goes away, and it shouldn't go away. I think time does probably make things a little easier as time goes on, right?
A little, right?
But I don't, I don't plan on, forgetting about that, but it was a very, very tough situation. But I'm very, very proud of having taken part in that with the people that I work with.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's. I also have another listing here. I would suggest anybody listening in to look into the Dooley Memorial that's nearby here as well.
Yeah.
And it's beautifully done. And there was also a suggestion of talking about Corrections Officer Sierra Green.
Sierra Green.
Mm-hmm.
Man, what a wonderful young lady.
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Green was a corrections officer of ours, and Sierra Green had all life in front of her. Man, she had the career path in front of her. Corrections officer, becoming a deputy sheriff, and working through that long career that when we enter, all of us want when we enter it, right? And
Yeah.
And I can. You were talking about. I'll back up and say this: after she died as a result of an accident, because she was working late and left to go home and went off side of the road on her way home and died in this auto accident. Again, just a devastating loss of a young person's life. And I remember you talking about people coming in and out of our jail, people serving time in and out of our jail. I'm not even sure really why I did this. I felt the need was I went back into the housing units some point after this to tell the people serving time in our jail that Sierra had died. And there were emotions there. Even though they were serving time and she was the officer doing her job.
Mm-hmm.
It was emotional to even see their responses, because that's what she was about. That's how she was seen by the inmates, if you would, because she would do the job right. She wasn't there to be the judge, jury, and executioner of any of that. She was there to take care of them. Our role is the safety and security of these people that are spending time in our facility. And she did it the right way, and it spoke very highly of who she was. Mm-hmm. And her mother, still to this day, has worked hard to create a scholarship committee or a scholarship in Sierra's name that she gives away. Greenview High School. For a while, that's where Sierra graduated from. She's given some of those away here in Lebanon. And I don't want to back up, but I will, because Brian Dooley's mom, Denise Dooley, has been doing the same thing for years and giving away scholarships to men or women that want to come in this profession through the police academy, and it's lived on, since then. These things, I never felt these things happen to me because they didn't happen to me. They happened when I was here, and I will be forever grateful how our staff handled it, and wish it didn't happen. But I needed them as much as they needed me to come through this.
Yeah, that's the part about being the leader in that position.
Right.
Is there anybody else you'd like to talk about that's people have had an impact on you?
Oh my!
I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. We don't have near the time, but let me say this to say this. I have always believed none of us get where we're going alone. You just don't. I mean, I felt that I've worked hard. I felt that I've had personal things in my life or situations that slow you down, or crises that could impact you, but there's always family, friends, coworkers, supervisors that you get help from, and you get support from, and you can even learn from some that, and I have, that you think, they're just not really quite who I want to model myself after. I mean, as people, right? And you see those, and no matter where you are, what profession, but you can learn by that. And my best friend I mentioned, he's a person that, I mean, who does this, wee hours of the morning, Christmas Day, to look for $150 worth of Christmas gifts? Not very many people. And that was probably the biggest impact that I had early in my career, is just saying, listen, you got a responsibility here. And there's just been so many people along the way that I am beholden to. But to name names, oh my goodness. I am old, so the names, I'd forget somebody, or whoever listens to this, the men and women at our office, I'll tell you this funny, because there's probably been more, they just didn't see it. There have been 2 times in my career here that I referred to one of our two different employees 2 different times by the wrong name. And of course, one was in an email that everybody saw. So, and then the other one was in a public meeting that I referred to, and we still joke about it today. But it's stay humble, be who you are, and enjoy it. Yeah, because I certainly have been, and I have enjoyed it, and will be forever grateful. This is an outstanding county, and it will be for years to come. And you've got a new sheriff coming in town, Barry Riley, that's the real deal. Forever grateful for what he has done for our office, along with the other men and women that are directly around us. Good things will happen.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about, I've talked to Barry Riley a few times, and I think the first time I met you was after I started working a couple months, about a year back, and I didn't know your name at the time.
Sure.
I should have taken it as I was clear that you were the sheriff given the uniform, but I'm like, okay, what's your name?
Yeah.
So I understand completely.
Yeah.
But then again, you have 200 and how many people work at 13?
But it's always Larry. It's always Larry first. With the ability to be serving as the sheriff is again, something grateful, but it's always Larry. Larry, I'm not consumed by a title. I will work to do what I'm supposed to do as a result of that important position, but it's always Larry.
Fair. That was going to be one of my first questions, but I thought, as respect, I should say sheriff.
Yeah.
Do you feel? How do you feel you've prepared Barry Riley for the sheriff position?
Well, I mean, that's probably a question he could answer, but Barry Riley has been working quite honestly to prepare himself for his career, for his entire career. He's anybody knows Barry, and he served our country before coming to the sheriff's office. He has served in virtually every capacity that the sheriff's office has to offer, beginning as a corrections officer. And I think he spent a good many years as a trainer. He's an outstanding training officer, and he did that for many, many years for not just members of our office, but education and other law enforcement men and women with other departments in our county. And he's, by just sheer nature of his personality and his drive, there isn't anything that he doesn't want to learn. And if it is something that's new to him, you can count on him digging in and turning it upside down and And even going forward, he's going to tweak things. He's going to try to find a way to improve things. And that's probably the biggest thing that I really love about him is he's going to look at it and figure out whether or not there's ways to improve it, or no, we're not doing that. We've had so many discussions and opportunities about the office, the operation. He served in our chief deputy role since 2015, so 9 years, where he has, by rank structure, he's been the second in command now for that 9 years. And he works hard to know the people in the office as well, which again, that's vital. So what have I done to help prepare him? He's probably helped prepare me over the last 9 years as well. So it's been kind of a mutual opportunity for an open, here's what I've done, here's how I've done it, and certainly don't rest on that. Figure out how, because he's going to change things, he's going to improve things, and I think that's outstanding. Because if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. I don't know. I made that up. I don't know. Somebody said that, but
it works.
But I think just developing that relationship has helped improve us both. And there's no question he's ready. He's ready, and he's got key people around him, and I do know that we are in agreement with this, and that is the people in that office should drive you, not you drive them. And if you have that balance because you'll have the day that you have to make a tough call or a tough decision. That's okay. He can do that. I can do that. But otherwise, it is come forward together. So.
All right. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that. So regarding memorable projects, there's a new jail, there's other different aspects of the sheriff's office. What memorable projects would you like to bring up?
Well, we talked about the jail. I mean, the jail situation's been in the works for some time, and that was a big effort on a lot of people's parts, and a lot of people, men and women in our office that took part in helping design and develop the operation inside a new facility. That's probably the largest one center project that is probably the most memorable, because it sits over there and it's in your face, right? This big giant structure. If I was hopeful in something that would be memorable, maybe to me, maybe to others, is just staying humble and trying to best to create an atmosphere in an office that we are a large family. We're not a perfect family by any stretch of the means, and there are, I've made mistakes like anybody else along the way. But to genuinely care about the men and women in this profession is it's been always my intention, and it will always be my intention. And wherever their future takes them, I hope that it is the best for them, whatever path they choose, and that's what I feel would be memorable to me. It's just the people, and that, I don't need fancy statues. I don't need trophies, plaques, things like that. I mean, it's appreciative. I don't mean to be unappreciative of that, but I just am hopeful that I left that type of thought process, that they are worth it all, and it's been very humbling to have that opportunity.
Fair. What are some of your highlights of your time in the county, would you say? We mentioned technology.
Oh my, that's
It's that one's probably the loudest one we have here. It's a generic.
sure. Well, I think we've talked about many of those though.
Yeah.
And the highlights is just the building those relationships, not just in our office but throughout the county, and that's always been important to me.
Yeah.
Those highlights are always going to involve people because we're in the people business, and sometimes we have difficulty with people. Most of the time we're building relationships with people that are even outside our profession, in the business community. And in Warren County, they have many people that are involved in projects or community events, or groups like Kiwanis and Rotary, Area Progress Council, that are always looking to improve lives, right, in some capacity. Having relationships with those type of people that have that interest are very rewarding. And I've had those opportunities for the entire time I've been here, that's for sure.
All right. You mentioned the Rotary Club. Interesting. What's some of the biggest changes that you noticed from when you started in Muskingum to what you end up here now in Warren?
Well, I mean, there are two different sides of the state, and I think economically they're in different situations. I grew up in somewhat of a poor background, actually, in a family of 6 children, and my mother and father working, to make ends meet. And when I started at the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office, I was making a grand total of $4 an hour, and loved it.
Oh.
So,
man, being humble.
So, as we were planning budgets, I mean, it was a bare necessities financial situation. With you're brand new. I was excited as a detective when I got a new cruiser or a new detective car that came from either the State Patrol or Bob Evans fleet cars that already had 80 to 90,000 miles on it, and there you go. And that was so. As far as the job itself goes, the job's the job, and we always we're dealing with the same types of things and similar people. Coming to Warren County, I left Muskingum County. My house payment was $458 a month. When I came to Warren County in 2000, the guys I were working with were making $1,200 house payments, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did I do? So the transition there and moving over here financially, it was just it was a different world.
Yeah.
And you could see rather quickly that we were in a location that was much more progressive, and they could be because the financial situation was a little more stable, economically developed, and they had business communities that could help support, the county finances. And so over the period of time, you could see those differences were going, and they became more and more clear as time went on, as the county improves and the financial picture improved. But it's still just kind of night and day from one side of the state to the other. And I've been to enough meetings with my colleagues to know that they're struggling in different ways than we are in Warren County. So it's another one of those things. I know I keep repeating myself, being blessed, but when there's a lot of things that impact how we do our job, right? But if you can take off that financial worry of whether or not you're going to have enough in your budget to be able to get the equipment that you need, you don't always get what you want. But the county's been very good of always making sure you get what you need. That wasn't always the case in where I'm from, and it's not always the case in the situations where some of my colleagues are.
Yeah. the financial part helps, and I get it. In terms of dealing with the amount of equipment, we mentioned cameras. Is there another aspect of police work that you found changed very drastically? You mentioned computers as well. What about radios?
Well, that's another thing about our county.
Mm-hmm.
The radios, the computer equipment, the cameras in the cars, the body cameras coming forward, the cameras that we're seeing put out on communities, all these things that have progressed over the years. But the county is also blessed with a department here that has always worked very, very well. I can't speak for how they've worked with other departments. I'm sure it is very good, but I can speak from our experience that this telecommunication division that sees that we're supplied with the best that we can get here in the county, whether it's technology for computers in the cars or in your office, or cell phones for your men and women that use those in the field. Updating that technology, looking for improving software and management software, and that's been a blessing and has changed significantly as well over the years. And I mean, technology in the jail. I mean, you're going from a facility over here, and you could virtually are doubling the potential capacity, but the technology went into this new building is just state of the art. It really is. And of course, trying to put that state of the art equipment in an existing concrete and steel building is almost impossible anyway. But it's different parts of the county departments, and again, telecommunication, data processing. These are all departments that are working for a common path in many ways, and trying to make our jobs easier, at least more efficient. And then you balance that whole privacy and security and the way, some of the, whether it's Ben Cliff or Gary Estes or those people they have to be balancing the security threats versus what we need to be able to do our jobs. Yeah, it's been very rewarding, and just you got to rely upon those people with their expertise, because that's not mine. Right.
You're going to patrolling, or you're going to different sites. Then that's fair, and that's not nose stuck in a computer.
Right.
Is there something in particular you wish you would have had when you started? Like, if you were to bring something from now to the 70s, what would you bring back?
I hope I did bring back, because you still, at the end of the day, you still have to focus on your ability to talk to people. That's never going to change.
Right.
And maybe if you're, even if you're in the IT world where you're, building websites or trying to improve the overall communication piece of the county, you're still communicating with people in some capacity. Yeah. Not as much if Larry Sims was back on patrol duty today. First of all, managing the mobile data computers in the cars would not be the most fun thing that I could do, but I can guarantee you this: you can send me to any house, any location, and I can talk to people. And if need be, I can handle whatever enforcement action that would be needed. But the most important part of that is you're going to go to somebody having their worst day. Yeah. And how are you going to handle that? And that's whether it was in the 70s, although there's been some transition and improvements on how that's happened over the years. But if I'd like to think that I could sit here and talk to anybody today, whether it was in the 70s or in today's world, and have a conversation with them about what happened to them, how it was impacted, what steps do we need to take to resolve it. Other than that, I don't think you can replace the changes technological changes, things like that from back then and to now.
Communication has been key, and to have my father tell it, he said it's lacking in today's world.
Sure. Well, I
Might
see
be.
There's some credibility to that.
Yeah, I feel like there is too. Yeah.
If you and I are sitting beside each other and not talking, but we're texting, I guess that could be a communication piece, but a little different. But
Less face to face. I've been to
Right.
a couple friends' houses where we just sat on the couch, and it's not as fun.
Right.
I would say. What are some of the most important things you've learned working at Warren County?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Right, the elevators
Yeah.
is a little much.
Yeah.
What are some of the most important things you've learned working here in Warren County?
Important things?
Yeah, different important things you've learned here.
Well, really, the important things to me is, again, as I've watched over the last 16 years with our ability to see how this county functions as a whole in our elected officials, how well they work together, and where they fit together, if you will, whether it's from the commissioner's side, the treasurer's side, recorder's side. These are all people that come to work, and I think understanding each one of their responsibilities and not having egos, that's a big thing to me, because many of us are in positions that some people get a little full of themselves, right? And I don't see that in any of these roles, and Warren County, and it doesn't always work that way elsewhere, but that carries over to our collective police chiefs, police departments. I mean, there's I think 11 total in our county, counting the sheriff's office, and we have monthly police chief meetings to discuss, whatever the current situation are, and there's been no egos there. And we've been able to sit and plan and discuss, and it's something that I talk about when I was going out to community events. I rave about that, because to get that collective group of important people, or people holding important positions in a room, and not having any issues that way, it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. That's what I see, and is most important for what my experience has been in this county, is the egos get set aside in order for us to work on whatever project it might be, or improve ways that we're delivering services.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway from Warren County and my experience with the people in these leadership roles.
That's fair, and egos is a big thing, and that's natural to have to become an elected official, and to have that sort of position and feel about yourself. It's natural,
right?
And it's good to always check them out the door. What is one thing I forgot to and mentioned earlier was, what are some of your personal experiences during the time of the new jail construction? I noticed that it was a piece that was right after the initial question, and
Sure.
I wanted to make sure that was highlighted.
Sure. Well, it was certainly my first project, and leading up to that, there was Chief Deputy Barry Riley and many others that had been working really on that project prior to trying to develop the information necessary to present to the county commissioners to get to a point where you could get approval to go forward, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that was several years that we had taken to prepare information to be able to present that, in addition to the fact that the county commissioners had to get to a point in their view, in their budget, and their financial responsibilities of if and when that project would go forward. And I mean, they asked the tough questions, and we did all those things that were expected of us. And then once it got started, and the partners, if you will, whether it's the architects or the contractor that they selected, when I say the word fun, but we had a lot of enjoyable time over here in the little temporary construction trailer, meeting pretty regularly with the supervisors on that project, and good people, and again, all had the same intentions. And those meetings, while enjoyable and rewarding, it allowed us to catch things ahead of time, to be able to maybe even change some things that didn't cost money and didn't fit us operationally. And they happened to be a company that were building jails all over the state and states above us. So they had the experience level, but not all the operations are exactly the same. So that piece, and then going over and see things happening from the ground up, and having our team of people that were specifically the jail, that's their area of expertise, going in and being able to develop policies and practices to put in place for the new facility that we're going to change, and to fit into the new technology, and watching that group do those kind of things was, it was just an enjoyable experience, and there were missteps along the way with some of the building stuff, but this was a massive building, $50+ million building. And then some of the fun post that doesn't happen anywhere in the state that I am aware of, and I've talked to some of my colleagues. 5 years, 5 years later, there is zero debt to that $50+ million building, zero.
Oh, wow.
And the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, that is saved because of not having to finance it.
Yeah.
For us taxpayers, we're all taxpayers here, right? Is just phenomenal. And
can't say that often. No.
Right.
My goodness.
Right.
And even working with I'm sure that's probably why the firm wanted to choose you guys, because they're like, oh, they can pay it out pretty quickly. And they did roughly, I remember reading they did maybe 1/3 or 2/3 of Ohio's jails at that point. They did quite a few,
Yes.
right?
The architect. Yes.
Quite a bit. What are you going to do when you retire?
Well, we are moving towards kids and grandkids.
All right.
We are blessed to have, we built a house in Delaware County, north of Columbus, in Sunbury, and we have 4 adult children. My oldest son is outside of San Antonio, his wife and her family, and then a son and daughter-in-law in Minot, North Dakota, because she's in the Air Force, and they have a 17-year-old daughter, and then we have 2 daughters, one in Westerville and one in the city of Delaware, and they each have 2 little kids, 7 and under, and that's where we're going to be.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
That sounds nice. What are you going to pick up any hobbies while you're out there?
We have hobbies. Our biggest thing is we're outdoor people. I don't want to sleep outdoors. No, I'm not a camper. We're hikers. We do go on vacations. And a lot of that time is doing things with family. We have family vacations. I'm sure I'll be doing other things. I don't have any immediate plans. My wife's been retired 7 years, so
she's been waiting on you then.
Yeah. So.
Oh man, do you think Barry's probably gonna try to give you a call when he's doing his work?
I hope not. If he needs anything, but I feel pretty comfortable that he is where he is, and will do great things.
That's fair. Did you ever bother Tom Harris when he was retired eventually?
Well, we would run into each other at some events, and I may follow up with something, but keep in mind he was an elected official here 4 years after that, so I haven't seen him regularly. But
fair enough. What advice would you want to give to current Warren County employees, or more specifically in the sheriff's office?
There
was a lot.
Life's not perfect. The sheriff's office is never going to be perfect. We're in a transition where it has, over the last few years, been a little bit more difficult to find people to come into our profession for a variety of reasons. And as young people, the only expectation really has ever been, focus on you, your family, and your career. And things will take care of itself, and hopefully stay connected to one another. This profession requires us to lean on one another in some of the most difficult times. And even though we all are going to have differences, we're going to have disagreements, but just know that at the end of the day, it's really about all of us collectively. And that's what I would suggest as young people that you look for in a career path, because you're going to spend a lot of years doing this job, or a career, whatever that might be. Find one where you're appreciated and you're connected. And financial income is important. At the end of the day, it's not the bottom line thing. If you're unhappy, if you're spending a career of 30 years and you're not very happy there, then so that's my 2 cents for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. Is there any additional information you'd like to talk about? Anything?
I think you've talked me out.
Fair enough.
No, you did a good job. I appreciate the opportunity. I really do.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this will conclude the interview.
All right.